The galactic communication hub floated in space like a giant metal flower. Its silver petals were actually massive antenna arrays that could pick up signals from across the galaxy. Deep inside the station, hundreds of alien beings worked day and night to keep the galaxy connected. Veltar sat at his workstation, his 8 spider-like legs moving across different control panels. His 4 eyes watched dozens of screens that showed incoming messages from thousands of worlds. It was a quiet night shift on the hub. Most of the galaxy slept during this cycle, and only emergency signals usually came through. The arachnoid communication officer had been doing this job for 12 years. He knew every type of signal that came through these channels. Trade requests from merchant ships, weather reports from farming worlds, news updates from the big city planets. Nothing ever surprised him anymore. That changed when the emergency frequency started screaming. Veltar's main eyes snapped to the red warning screen. An SOS signal was coming through, but it was weak and breaking up. The computer tried to clean up the transmission, but static filled most of it. Through the noise, Veltar could hear panic in the alien voice. "This is Captain Zara of the merchant vessel Peaceful Venture. We are... systems failing. Life support critical. Anyone who can hear this, please help us." Veltar quickly traced the signal's origin. His heart sank when he saw the location data. The Kepler Nebula. That was bad. Really bad. The Kepler Nebula was a dangerous region of space where dying stars had created a maze of gas clouds, radiation storms, and gravity wells that could crush a ship. Most civilized species avoided it completely. The few that tried to cross it usually never came back. "Captain, this is Galactic Communications Hub Station 7. We have received your distress call. Please provide your exact situation and passenger count." The reply came back filled with static. "Thank the stars, someone heard us. We have 347 refugees aboard from the Outer Rim conflicts. Mixed species. Our main drive is dead, and we're drifting deeper into the nebula. Life support is failing. We have maybe 18 hours of breathable air left." Veltar felt his stomach drop. 347 beings were going to die, and there was nothing he could do about it. He ran the numbers through his computer, checking which Federation ships were closest to the nebula. The closest Federation rescue ship was 4 days away. Even if they left right now and pushed their engines to maximum, they would arrive to find only floating corpses. But that was only part of the problem. Federation ships were not built for places like the Kepler Nebula. They were elegant vessels designed for safe travel between civilized worlds. Their hulls were thin to save weight. Their engines were efficient but weak. Their life support systems were basic because they never expected to face real emergencies. A Federation rescue ship trying to enter the Kepler Nebula would probably join the Peaceful Venture as another wreck floating in space. Veltar stared at his screens, feeling helpless. In his 12 years of service, he had never lost a distress call. He had always been able to get help to anyone who needed it. The Federation was supposed to protect all its member species. That was the whole point of joining the galactic community. But the Federation had rules. Safe rules. Sensible rules. Rules that said no ship should risk itself for others if the chances of success were low. Rules that said the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. Rules that were about to let 347 innocent beings die. The communication officer's clawed hands hovered over his control panel. He could follow protocol and report the situation to his supervisors. They would make the official decision that no Federation ship could attempt a rescue. They would file the proper reports and close the case. Everything would be done correctly and legally, or he could do something else, something that went against every rule and regulation he had sworn to follow. Veltar looked around the communication center. His supervisor was in another section, dealing with a trade dispute between 2 mining worlds. Most of his co-workers were focused on their own tasks. No one was paying attention to him. His hands moved to a different control panel. This one controlled the restricted frequencies, the channels that the Federation monitored but never officially used, the frequencies reserved for the barbaric species from dangerous worlds, the ones the civilized galaxy called Deathworlders. These were the beings from high-gravity planets where the weather could kill you, from worlds with poisonous atmospheres and deadly predators, from places where you had to be tough just to survive another day. The Federation tolerated them as members, but barely. They were considered crude and violent by civilized standards. Their ships reflected their nature, built like flying fortresses with thick armor and powerful engines, loaded with backup systems and emergency supplies, designed to survive anything the universe could throw at them. If anyone could reach the Peaceful Venture in time, it would be them. Veltar took a deep breath and switched to the Deathworlder emergency frequency. This was completely against regulations. He could lose his job. He could face criminal charges. The Federation Council would be furious that he had involved the Deathworlders in Federation business without permission. But 347 beings were going to die if he did nothing. This is Galactic Communications Hub Station 7, broadcasting on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. We have a code black rescue situation in the Kepler Nebula. Federation vessel, Peaceful Venture, is dead in space with life support failing. 347 souls aboard. Any vessel capable of nebula operations, please respond. Veltar sent the full location data and technical details about the Peaceful Venture. Then he sat back and waited. Maybe no Deathworlder ships were in range. Maybe they would ignore a Federation distress call. Maybe he had just ended his career for nothing. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Veltar began to think he had made a terrible mistake. Then his communications board lit up like a festival display. Communications Hub. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Space Navy vessel Indomitable. We have received your distress call and are preparing immediate response. Estimate arrival at Nebula Edge in 6 hours. Hub Station. This is Captain Thorek of the Korthak Confederacy ship Iron Claw. We are moving to assist the Terran rescue effort. 2 heavy cruisers en route. Galactic Hub, Serpentine Collective vessel Shadow Strike here. Our infiltration squadron is closing on the target zone. We will provide support to the rescue operation. More signals came in. Ships from half a dozen Deathworlder species were changing course to help. Some were military vessels. Others were civilian ships with tough crews and tougher hulls. All of them were dropping whatever they were doing to race toward the Kepler Nebula. Veltar stared at his screens in amazement. The civilized Federation had written off the refugees as unsavable. But the so-called barbarians were willing to risk their lives for complete strangers. Communications Hub, came Admiral Chen's voice again. We're going to need continuous updates on the Peaceful Venture's condition. Can you maintain contact with them? Affirmative, Admiral. We'll relay all communications through this station. Good. And Hub Officer, whoever made the call to contact us, they made the right choice. We'll get those people out. Veltar felt a strange warmth in his chest. For the first time in hours, he believed the refugees might actually survive. He opened a channel back to the Peaceful Venture. Captain Zara, this is Communications Hub. Help is coming. Multiple ships are en route to your position. Thank you, Hub Station. Thank you so much. We'll hold on as long as we can. As Veltar watched the Deathworlder fleet racing toward the nebula on his tracking screens, he realized something important. The Federation might be civilized and advanced, but when people were dying, it took barbarians to save them. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the emergency alert came through. The bridge of the Indomitable went from quiet routine to controlled chaos in seconds. Officers ran to their stations while warning lights flashed red throughout the massive warship. Admiral, we're receiving an SOS on the Deathworlder emergency frequency, reported Lieutenant Commander Martinez from the communication station. It's coming from a Federation communication hub. Chen set down her coffee cup and walked to the main display screen. The Indomitable was one of 12 ships in the 7th Fleet, currently on patrol in the outer reaches of human space. They were far from Earth, but their ships were built to operate anywhere in the galaxy. Put it on the main screen, Chen ordered. The message played through the bridge speakers. Chen listened to the details about the refugee ship and the Kepler Nebula, her face growing more serious with each word. When it finished, the bridge was silent. Thoughts? Chen asked her senior officers. It's a trap, said Commander Williams, her tactical officer. The Federation doesn't ask Deathworlders for help. Ever. This could be some kind of setup. Even if it's real, added Chief Engineer Santos. The nebula will tear us apart. Our ships are tough, but that place is a graveyard. Chen nodded slowly. Both officers were making good points. The Federation barely tolerated humanity as a member species. They thought humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable. Human ships were considered crude compared to the elegant Federation vessels. Human tactics were called barbaric by civilized standards. So why would they call for human help now? Navigation. What's our distance to the Kepler Nebula? Chen asked. 6 hours at maximum burn, Admiral, replied the navigation officer. But we'd have to abandon our current patrol route. Chen thought about the politics involved. Humans were always walking a careful line with the Federation. One wrong move could result in trade sanctions or worse. Responding to this call without Official authorization would anger a lot of important people, but 347 refugees were going to die if nobody helped them. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Prepare for immediate departure to the Kepler Nebula. We have a rescue mission. Admiral, Commander Williams said quietly, this could destroy your career. Maybe, Chen replied. But I can live with a destroyed career. I can't live with letting innocent people die when I could have saved them. The Indomitable and her sister ships turned toward the nebula and accelerated to maximum speed. These were not the sleek, efficient vessels that the Federation preferred. They were built like flying fortresses with thick armor plating and redundant systems throughout. Every critical component had a backup, and most backups had their own backups. They needed to be tough. Humanity had learned the hard way that space was trying to kill you every second of every day. Early human space travel had been a series of disasters and near misses. Ships broke down constantly. Life support failed. Navigation computers died at the worst possible moments. So humans built their ships to survive anything. If the main engine died, they had backup engines. If those failed, they had chemical rockets. If life support went down, they had emergency oxygen supplies that could last for weeks. If the hull cracked, they had repair drones and patches ready to go. Federation species thought this was wasteful and primitive. Why carry all that extra weight when proper planning and maintenance could prevent problems? Why prepare for disasters that good engineering could avoid? But humans knew something the Federation had forgotten. Disasters happened anyway. As the Uizine human fleet raced toward the nebula, other ships were joining the rescue effort. The first to respond was Captain Thorek of the Korthak Confederacy. His people came from a frozen world where the temperature never rose above -20 degrees. Korthak ships were built like icebreakers, designed to smash through anything in their path. Human Admiral, came Thorek's voice over the communication system. The Iron Claw and her sister ship Frosthammer are en route to assist. We will arrive at the same time as your fleet. Acknowledged, Captain Thorek. We're glad to have your help. The Korthak were natural warriors from a world that fought them every day. They understood that sometimes you had to take risks to save lives. The Federation thought they were too violent, but they had never abandoned someone in need. Next came the Serpentine Collective. Their ships appeared on the sensors like ghosts, barely visible even when you knew where to look. The Serpentines came from worlds poisoned by radiation and chemical storms. They had learned to survive in places that would kill most other species in minutes. Federation refugee ship, this is Shadow Strike, came the hissing voice of the Serpentine commander. We hunt in the darkness between stars. The nebula cannot hide from us. We will find you. More Deathworlders responded to the call. The Rockbreakers sent mining ships with hulls strong enough to survive asteroid impacts. The Void Swimmers contributed vessels designed to operate in the empty space between galaxies, where one mistake meant drifting forever in the dark. Each species brought something different to the rescue effort, but they all shared one thing in common. They came from dangerous worlds that had taught them to be prepared for the worst. As Admiral Chen watched the growing fleet on her tactical display, she felt a mix of pride and sadness. Pride that so many different species were willing to risk their lives for strangers. Sadness that the Federation had written off these refugees as unsavable. Admiral, reported the communications officer, we're getting updates from the refugee ship. Their life support is getting worse. They're venting atmosphere through micro-fractures in the hull. Time to Nebula Edge? Chen asked. 4 hours. 37 minutes. Chen did the math in her head. It would be close. Very close. But they might just make it in time. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're going to push our engines past the red line. I know the risks, but those people don't have time for us to be careful. One by one, the Deathworlder captains acknowledged the order. They would burn out their engines if necessary. They would risk their own ships and crews to save complete strangers. That was what made them different from the civilized galaxy. The Federation talked about the value of life and the importance of helping others. But when it came time to actually risk something, they always found reasons to stay safe. The Deathworlders didn't talk about heroism or noble sacrifice. They just did what needed to be done, no matter the cost. As the combined fleet raced through space, Admiral Chen thought about the refugees waiting in the dying ship. They probably had no idea that help was coming. They might be preparing to die, saying goodbye to their families, making peace with their gods. But they weren't going to die. Not if Chen had anything to say about it. The Kepler Nebula appeared on the main screen as a swirling mass of gas and energy. It looked beautiful from a distance, like a cosmic flower blooming in the darkness. But Chen knew it was one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy. Federation ships avoided it for good reason. The radiation could cook unshielded electronics in minutes. The gravity wells could crush even military-grade hulls. The electromagnetic storms could blind sensors and disable communications. But Deathworlder ships weren't built for safety. They were built to survive hell itself. All ships prepare for nebula entry, Chen ordered. Remember, we're not here to fight the nebula. We're here to get those refugees out alive. The fleet plunged into the swirling chaos of the Kepler Nebula, their tough hulls and redundant systems ready for whatever the universe could throw at them. The moment the Deathworlder fleet entered the Kepler Nebula, everything went wrong. Admiral Chen watched her bridge displays flicker and spark as radiation levels spiked beyond anything her sensors had ever recorded. The beautiful swirling gases outside were actually a death trap of charged particles and electromagnetic storms that could fry a ship's electronics in seconds. Radiation levels are off the charts, reported Chief Engineer Santos. Any Federation ship would be dead in the water by now. But we're not a Federation ship, Chen replied calmly. Switch to hardened systems. Bring the backup sensors online. The, Indomitable shuddered as gravity wells pulled at her hull from multiple directions. These were the collapsed remains of dead stars, creating pockets of space-time distortion that could crush a vessel like an empty can. But human ships were built to survive the chaotic gravity fields around Earth's sun, where solar flares could create similar conditions. Navigation is getting sketchy, reported the helm officer. The gravity wells are throwing off our instruments. Switch to manual navigation, Chen ordered. Plot a course using visual references and dead reckoning. Our ancestors crossed oceans. Using stars and compasses, we can handle this. Captain Thorek's voice crackled through the communication system, distorted by electromagnetic interference. Human Admiral, the Korthak ships are holding together. These conditions remind us of home during the storm season. Chen smiled grimly. The Korthak homeworld had weather that included radioactive blizzards and gravity storms from their unstable moon. To them, the nebula was probably just another day at the office. The Serpentine ships were having even less trouble. Their vessels seemed to dance through the dangerous region, using sensors that worked on completely different principles than standard Federation technology. They had evolved on worlds where the atmosphere was poisonous and the radiation levels would cook most life forms. Their ships reflected that harsh evolution. Shadow strike to fleet, came the hissing voice of the Serpentine commander. We detect the refugee vessel bearing 27 Mark 8, distance approximately 400,000 kilometers. But we also detect other ships in the area. Chen felt her heart sink. Other ships in the Kepler Nebula could only mean one thing: pirates. The nebula was a perfect hunting ground for scavengers. Ships that broke down or got lost in the dangerous region were easy targets. The pirates would wait for vessels to become disabled, then move in to steal cargo and sell passengers into slavery. How many ships? Chen asked. At least 6 vessels, the Serpentine replied. They appear to be circling the refugee ship like predators waiting for prey to die. Chen looked at her tactical display. 6 pirate ships against 12 Deathworlder vessels should be an easy fight. But these weren't normal conditions. The nebula was interfering with targeting systems and communications. It would be like fighting in a fog while being hit by lightning. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have hostiles in the area. Rules of engagement are simple. Anyone threatening the refugees is fair game. Anyone who gets in our way gets moved. Anyone who shoots at us gets shot back. The Deathworlder fleet moved deeper into the nebula, their tough hulls shrugging off radiation that would have killed Federation crews in minutes. Chen could see why the civilized galaxy stayed away from places like this. It took a special kind of insanity to build ships that could operate in such conditions. But that insanity was exactly what the refugees needed right now. Contact with the Peaceful Venture, reported the communications officer. They're in bad shape, Admiral. Hull breaches on 3 decks, life support down to 12 hours. They know the pirates are out there, but they can't do anything about it. Tell them help has arrived, Chen said, and tell them to stay away from their viewports. This might get messy. The pirates struck first, just as Chen expected. They had been waiting for the refugee ship to die naturally, but the arrival of the rescue fleet had forced their hand. 6 vessels emerged from the swirling gas clouds, opening fire with weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. They wanted the refugees alive for the slave markets. They had made one critical mistake. They assumed the Deathworlder ships would follow civilized rules of engagement. The Indomitable returned fire with weapons that had been designed to fight in the asteroid fields around Earth where enemies could hide behind rocks and strike without warning. Her main guns tore through the nebula's interference like it wasn't there, targeting systems that had been hardened against solar radiation and magnetic storms. The first pirate ship disappeared in a ball of fire. Captain Thoric's response was even more direct. The Iron Claw accelerated straight at the second pirate vessel, ignoring the smaller ship's desperate attempts to disable her engines. At the last second, the Korthak ship fired her forward missiles and rammed the pirate vessel with her reinforced bow. The pirate ship cracked in half. The Serpentine ships struck from angles that should have been impossible, appearing out of gas clouds where no ship should be able to hide. Their weapons were designed to work in the toxic atmosphere of their homeworld, which meant nebula conditions barely slowed them down. 3 more pirate ships died before they realized what they were facing. The last pirate vessel tried to run, but the Rockbreaker mining ship caught it with a tractor beam, designed to move asteroids. The pirates surrendered immediately, begging for mercy they had never shown their own victims. "Secure the prisoners," Chen ordered. "We'll turn them over to Federation authorities later. Right now, we have refugees to save." The peaceful Venture hung in space like a broken toy. Her elegant hull cracked in dozens of places. She was a typical Federation merchant vessel, built for comfort and efficiency rather than durability. Looking at her, Chen could see why she had failed so completely in the nebula. She simply wasn't designed for this kind of environment. "Life signs are weak but stable," reported the sensor operator. 347 beings, just like the distress call said. "Mixed species. Looks like families with children." Chen studied the refugee ship's condition. The hull breaches were too extensive for normal docking procedures. In civilized space, they would need to carefully match airlocks and use environmental suits to transfer passengers safely. But they weren't in civilized space. They were in the Kepler Nebula, where normal procedures could get everyone killed. "All ships, prepare for combat boarding," Chen announced. "We're going to cut through their hull and extract the refugees directly." Her bridge crew looked at her in surprise. Combat boarding was a military technique used to capture enemy ships. It involved cutting through armor plating with plasma torches and storming through the breach. It was dangerous, violent, and completely against Federation regulations for civilian rescues. It was also the fastest way to get the refugees off their dying ship. "Admiral," Commander Williams said carefully, "the Federation will not approve of this method." "The Federation isn't here," Chen replied. "We are, and we're going to save those people using whatever methods work." The Deathworlder ships moved into position around the peaceful Venture. Their crews prepared boarding equipment designed for hostile environments and emergency situations. These weren't the careful, civilized tools that Federation rescue teams used. They were crude, effective devices built to work when everything else had failed. Plasma cutters designed to slice through asteroid rock. Portable life support systems that could keep a person alive in hard vacuum. Emergency medical kits that could stabilize injuries that would kill someone in minutes. The refugees were about to be saved by barbarians using barbaric methods, but they were going to be saved. "Begin boarding operations," Chen ordered. The rescue was about to become something the civilized galaxy had never seen before. Deathworlders doing what they did best, surviving impossible situations and making sure everyone else survived too. The first thing that shocked the Deathworlder rescue teams was how unprepared the peaceful Venture was for any kind of emergency. Sergeant Rodriguez led the first boarding team through the plasma-cut hole in the refugee ship's hull. She wore powered armor designed to operate in the vacuum of space, with enough life support to keep her alive for 6 hours in the worst conditions. Her equipment could handle anything from radiation poisoning to explosive decompression. What she found inside, the Federation merchant vessel, made her angry. "Admiral, you need to see this," Rodriguez reported over her radio. "This ship is a death trap." The peaceful Venture had been designed with Federation safety standards, which meant everything was built for normal operations in civilized space. The life support system had no backup power source. The emergency oxygen supplies were barely enough for 2 hours. The hull plating was so thin that micrometeorites had punched dozens of tiny holes through it. Most shocking of all, the ship had no emergency equipment whatsoever. No spacesuits for the passengers, no emergency rations, no medical supplies beyond basic first aid kits. The Federation had built a ship that was completely helpless the moment anything went wrong. How did they expect to handle emergencies? Rodriguez asked her team medic. "I don't think they expected emergencies," replied Corman Martinez. "Look at this life support panel. It doesn't even have manual overrides. If the computer dies, the whole system shuts down. Rodriguez found the refugees huddled together in the ship's main passenger area. 347 beings, from a dozen different species, all fleeing the violence in the Outer Rim territories. There were families with young children, elderly beings who could barely walk, injured soldiers still recovering from recent battles. They were all slowly dying as their ship's life support system failed around them. "Don't be afraid," Rodriguez announced, her voice carried by translation devices. "We're here to get you out." The refugees stared at her in terror. To them, she probably looked like a monster in her bulky armor and intimidating helmet. Federation rescue teams wore light, comfortable suits that looked friendly and non-threatening. Deathworlder equipment was built for survival, not appearance. A tall, blue-skinned alien who seemed to be in charge stepped forward. "Are you Federation rescue personnel?" "No," Rodriguez replied honestly. "We're from Earth. Humans. We got your distress call and came to help." The alien looked confused. "Humans? But you're Deathworlders. Why would you help us?" Rodriguez had heard that question before. The civilized galaxy couldn't understand why species from dangerous worlds would risk themselves for strangers. They thought Deathworlders were only interested in fighting and conquest. "Because you needed help," Rodriguez said simply. "Now we need to get you off this ship before it completely falls apart." The rescue operation was unlike anything the refugees had ever seen. Human, Korthak, and Serpentine rescue teams worked together with brutal efficiency. They didn't waste time with careful procedures or gentle handling. They moved fast and got results. Human medics wearing powered armor carried refugees who couldn't walk on their own. The armor's strength enhancement let them carry multiple casualties at once, something that would be impossible for normal Federation rescue workers. Korthak engineers sealed the worst hull breaches using repair foam that hardened instantly in vacuum conditions. Their techniques were crude but effective. They weren't trying to fix the ship permanently, just keep it together long enough to evacuate everyone. Serpentine teams used their natural ability to see in total darkness to search the ship's damaged sections for anyone who might be trapped. Their flexible bodies let them squeeze through passages that were too narrow for other species. But the real difference was in how they handled the evacuation itself. Federation rescue procedures required careful atmospheric matching and gradual pressure changes to avoid harming civilian passengers. The process was safe but slow. Each refugee had to be individually checked, fitted with proper safety equipment, and carefully moved through airlocks designed for gentle transition. The Deathworlders used military evacuation techniques. They put refugees in emergency pods that could survive hard vacuum and explosive decompression. The pods were uncomfortable and frightening, but they could keep someone alive in conditions that would kill them instantly without protection. "This is not regulation," protested a green-scaled alien who seemed to be some kind of Federation official. "You're treating civilians like military personnel. We're keeping them alive," replied Captain Thoric, his massive bear-like form towering over the complaining alien. "Your regulations assume perfect conditions. Perfect conditions do not exist." The Korthak captain was right. Federation regulations were written for ideal situations where rescue ships arrived quickly and everything went according to plan. But in the real universe, things went wrong. Equipment failed. Time ran out. People died while others followed proper procedures. As the evacuation continued, the rescue teams discovered something that made their blood run cold. The peaceful venture wasn't the only ship that had died in the Kepler Nebula. "Admiral," reported Sergeant Rodriguez, "we found passenger records for other vessels. Looks like the pirates have been hunting in this region for months, maybe years." The evidence was scattered throughout the wreckage they found floating in the nebula. Dozens of Federation ships had tried to cross the dangerous region over the past few years. Some had been destroyed by the natural hazards. Others had been picked off by pirates after their systems failed. All of them could have been saved if they had been built like Deathworlder ships. "Look at this," said Chief Engineer Santos, examining wreckage from a Federation passenger liner. "The hull is made of lightweight composite that dissolves in high radiation. The engines have no backup power systems. The life support relies on computers that crash the moment they encounter electromagnetic interference." Admiral Chen studied the data from her command chair. The pattern was clear and horrifying. Federation ship design philosophy prioritized comfort, efficiency, and cost savings over durability and redundancy. They built ships that worked perfectly in safe conditions but failed catastrophically when anything went wrong. It was the opposite of Deathworlder engineering. Human ships were overbuilt and over-equipped because humans had learned that the universe was actively trying to kill them. Korthak vessels were tough because their homeworld had weather that could crush normal buildings. Serpentine ships carried triple redundancy because their species had survived multiple extinction events. How many people have died because of poor ship design? Chen wondered aloud. Too many, replied Commander Williams, and it's going to keep happening until someone changes how the Federation builds ships. The last refugees were evacuated from the peaceful venture, just as the ship's life support finally died completely. The vessel that had been their home for weeks during their escape from war zones was now just another piece of wreckage floating in the deadly nebula. But the people who had been aboard were alive. 347 beings who should have died were now safe aboard Deathworlder ships built to keep them that way. All refugees evacuated and secure, reported Rodriguez. Medical teams are checking everyone, but most injuries are minor. Dehydration, malnutrition, some radiation exposure. Nothing that can't be treated. Admiral Chen nodded with satisfaction. The rescue had been successful, but she knew this was just the beginning. When word got out about what had happened in the Kepler Nebula, there would be questions. Hard questions, about Federation ship design, about why Deathworlders had to save people the civilized galaxy had written off as unsavable. But first, they had to get the refugees to safety. Set course for the nearest Federation medical facility, Chen ordered, and prepare a full report on everything we found here. The galaxy needs to know what really happened in this nebula. The Deathworlder fleet began its journey back to civilized space, carrying survivors who owed their lives to the so-called barbarians from dangerous worlds. 3 days after the rescue, Admiral Chen made a decision that would change galactic politics forever. Instead of quietly delivering the refugees and disappearing back to human space, she transmitted a complete report of the rescue operation to every major government and news organization in the galaxy. The report included sensor data, casualty figures, and detailed analysis of the Federation ship designs that had failed so catastrophically. But most importantly, it included video recordings of the rescue itself. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as Deathworlder rescue teams cut through the hull of the peaceful venture with plasma torches. They saw human soldiers in powered armor carrying alien children to safety. They witnessed Korthak engineers sealing hull breaches with tools that looked more like weapons than repair equipment. Most shocking of all, they saw the wreckage of dozens of other Federation ships floating in the Kepler Nebula like a graveyard of civilized space's failures. On the Federation Council's homeworld, emergency sessions were called to discuss the implications. The report was devastating to their carefully maintained image of superior technology and advanced civilization. How do we explain this? Asked Councillor Velneth, her tentacles writhing with agitation. How do we tell our people that our ships are death traps compared to Deathworlder vessels? We don't have to explain anything, replied Councillor Zartok. We can classify this report and deny the Deathworlders permission to operate in Federation space without authorization. But it was already too late. The story had spread across the galaxy's communication networks faster than any government could stop it. Every Federation citizen now knew that their advanced civilization had failed to save refugees that barbaric Deathworlders had rescued with ease. The political shockwave was immediate and devastating. On worlds throughout Federation space, citizens began asking uncomfortable questions about their government's priorities. Why were their ships so fragile? Why did the military spend money on comfort features instead of backup systems? Why had they never been told that Deathworlder vessels were actually superior in emergency situations? The media picked up the story and ran with it. News programs featured interviews with engineering experts who confirmed what everyone could see in the rescue footage. Federation ships were built like luxury hotels, while Deathworlder vessels were built like fortresses. Look at the hull thickness comparison, explained Dr. Yarosel, a prominent Centauri ship designer on the galaxy's most popular news program. The human vessel has armor plating 6 times thicker than our standard merchant ships. Their life support system has 4 independent backup power sources. Their engines can operate even if 3/4 of their components are destroyed. But surely this comes at a cost in efficiency and comfort? Asked the news anchor. Of course it does, Dr. Yarosel replied. But efficiency doesn't matter when your ship is falling apart around you. Comfort doesn't help when your life support is failing. The interview was viewed by billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. For the first time, the civilized galaxy was forced to confront the possibility that their way of doing things might not be the best way. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the galactic reaction with mixed feelings. She was proud that humanity had saved the refugees, but she was also worried about the consequences. The Federation didn't like being shown up by species they considered inferior. Her concerns proved justified when she received an official message from Federation Command. Admiral Chen, you are hereby ordered to report to Federation headquarters to explain your unauthorized military action in Federation space. A formal inquiry will be conducted into your violation of established protocols. Chen read the message twice, then deleted it. She had expected this reaction. The Federation couldn't admit that Deathworlders had succeeded where they had failed, so they were going to blame her for not following proper procedures. But then something unexpected happened. The Galactic Emergency Response Council, a civilian organization that coordinated rescue operations across Federation space, sent a very different message. Admiral Chen, we would like to offer you a position as Special Advisor for Emergency Operations. Your expertise in disaster response could help us save thousands of lives in future crises. More messages followed. The Merchants Guild wanted to hire human escort ships for dangerous trade routes. The Explorers Union requested Deathworlder vessels for expeditions to hazardous regions. Even some Federation military commanders quietly asked about joint training exercises. The galaxy was waking up to a truth that governments didn't want to acknowledge. When things went wrong, you needed people who knew how to handle disasters. And nobody knew disasters like the Deathworlders. The changes started small but spread quickly. Federation shipyards began quietly adding backup systems to their new designs. Military academies requested exchange programs with Deathworlder training centers. Emergency response teams started studying Deathworlder rescue techniques. Most significantly, the Galactic Emergency Response Protocol was completely rewritten. The new version included automatic notification of Deathworlder fleets for any rescue operation in hazardous conditions. The civilized galaxy had finally admitted that sometimes they needed help from the barbarians. The changes weren't welcomed by everyone. Conservative politicians complained that Federation culture was being corrupted by primitive influences. Military traditionalists argued that proper planning could prevent the disasters that required Deathworlder intervention. But public opinion had shifted. Citizens who had seen the rescue footage knew who they wanted responding when their lives were on the line. The refugees from the peaceful venture became powerful advocates for this new approach. They toured Federation worlds, telling their story to anyone who would listen. They described how Federation rescue ships had written them off as unsavable, while Deathworlder crews risked everything to pull them from a burning wreck. The humans didn't care that we were strangers, said Kalaneth, a Centauri mother who had been traveling with her 3 children. They didn't care that saving us might damage their ships or hurt their crews. They just saw people who needed help, and they helped. Her testimony was particularly powerful because she was a Federation citizen, not some primitive from a dangerous world. When civilized beings heard her praise the Deathworlders, it carried more weight than any government report. Back at the Galactic Communication Hub, Veltar watched the changes with satisfaction. The spider-like communications officer had kept his job despite breaking regulations to call the Deathworlders. His supervisors had wanted to fire him, but public opinion made him untouchable. He was the officer who had saved 347 lives by ignoring the rules. He still monitored the standard Federation frequencies, but now he also kept a channel open to the Deathworlder emergency networks. The barbaric frequencies were no longer forbidden. They were officially part of the galaxy's emergency response system. The final change came 6 months after the rescue, when Admiral Chen received an unexpected visitor on the Indomitable. It was Counselor Vel Neth from IOU, the Federation Council, the same alien who had worried about explaining the rescue to her people. Admiral, the counselor said, her tentacles now calm and controlled. I've come to make a formal apology for the way the Federation initially responded to your rescue operation. We were wrong to criticize your methods. Chen nodded politely, but said nothing. She had learned that sometimes the best response was to let politicians talk themselves into corners. More importantly, the counselor continued, we would like to offer you a position as head of the new Galactic Emergency Response Fleet. It would be a joint command, with ships and crews from both Federation and Deathworlder species. Chen considered the offer carefully. It would mean working within the Federation system, following their rules and regulations, but it would also mean being in position to save lives when the next disaster struck. I accept, Chen said finally, but I have one condition. When lives are on the line, we do whatever works, no matter what the regulations say. Agreed, replied the counselor immediately. The galaxy has learned that survival sometimes requires barbaric solutions. As the counselor left, Chen looked out at the stars through the Indomitable's main view screen. Somewhere out there, other ships were probably in trouble. Other crews were facing disasters that would test their equipment and their courage. But now they wouldn't face those disasters alone. The galaxy had learned to call the Deathworlders when civilization wasn't enough. And the Deathworlders would answer, just like they always had. The universe was still trying to kill everyone in it. But now the civilized galaxy had allies who knew how to fight back.